Welcome back. Another edition of the Right Guys podcast. My name is Max McGuire. No Mr. Producer Josh today. His mom had a procedure done today. So let's all keep her in our prayers. Last I talked to him, she's doing fine. So he's out today. So going to do the solo. Probably not a very long show today. Done traveling. Back home in the studio. So spent all day yesterday in the airport. I don't know what's going on with airports lately, but every time I've been flying lately, it's been delays. Rough. So didn't have a ton of time to plan a full show on my own today, but I did want to talk about some things that I find really interesting. And those are poll numbers, new poll numbers. Now, we know the tricks that the Democrats and the left use to bolster their candidates in the polls to create the narrative that their candidate, Kamala Harris now, unless it changes again, it might change again, who knows, to create the narrative that, oh, wow, she's the next messiah, even though she's actually the most unpopular VP in history, never got a single vote when she ran for president in the primaries. Oh, forget that. She's super popular. They overpoll Democrats. So you look at samples at this and, oh, wow, their sample of America, their idea of what America looks like is a world where there's more Democrats than Republicans. As we've covered on this show before, that's not the case. The plurality of voters are independents. But when it comes to Democrats versus Republicans, there's actually slightly more Republicans than registered Democrats. Now, that's sometimes hard to measure because lots of people say they're independents, but they're actually just Democrats, same with Republicans. But in terms of just D versus R, tends to be a R +2 kind of country, +3 kind of country. So when you run a poll, then instead of having independents be the plurality of voters, you have a Democrat +5 sample. That means 5% more Democrats than Republicans. It isn't hard to get to a result that shows Kamala Harris up 5, right? It's in the math. It's in the numbers. So I wanted to go through some of the polls that are out in the last 24, 48, 72 hours that don't go into those tricks, right? They don't. I mean, I was looking at one poll. I was like, wow, Kamala Harris is leading by 1. And I look at the fine print and it's among adults. So there's different ways you can do a poll. You can do likely voters. Those are people who say, yes, I'm absolutely going to crawl over broken glass to vote for my candidate. There's registered voters, which means, yes, they have confirmed that they're registered to vote. And then there's adults. Adults includes people who aren't even registered to vote. So I think do I have that? Do I have that poll? Yeah, here we go. Let me share my screen to show it. Here we go. Share screen. There we go. So this is a poll from YouGov America. This is out. If you haven't followed this person on Twitter at @political_polls, I recommend you do it. It's going to drive you insane just because of the polls that are done by really shitty pollsters you've never heard before. It does everything. It does the top pollsters that always get included in Real Clear Politics, 538, things like that. This Twitter handle also has kind of you never heard of them polls. This is a YouGov poll that showed Kamala Harris up by 1. But then you look at this little tidbit of information here. 2,000 adults. So they didn't even whittle it down to registered voters, let alone try and whittle it down to likely voters. And remember, we are less than 90 days away from the election. We're less than a month away from the first early voting in some of these states. So the time to shift toward likely voters, if it hasn't already come, it's here. It'll be happening in the next week or two. But to do a poll less than 90 days away from the election, showing 2,000 adults, not even limiting to registered voters, and then Kamala Harris is only up by 1, that's a bad news poll for Democrats. It's a bad news poll for Democrats. But let's get into some of these other ones that I wanted to talk about a little bit today. Again, Mr. Producer Josh is out, so I'm solo today. Don't have a ton to cover today, but some of the things I found really interesting tooling around on Twitter. This is RMG. So Scott Rasmussen left Rasmussen polling, and he now does his own. The scuttlebutt was that Scott Rasmussen does his own polling through RMG research because he didn't like the shift that Rasmussen had going on. So he went out and started doing his own thing. He released a poll among likely voters. Again, likely voters is what you want to see as you're getting closer to election day, close to early voting. Among likely voters, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are tied. Tied. Now, why is that important? That's important because just a week ago, Scott Rasmussen with RMG Research showed that Kamala Harris was up by 5. To go from up by 5, and again, this is Rasmussen, not a far left PPP kind of Democrat pollster. This is Scott Rasmussen. Immediately after the switch over to Kamala Harris from Joe Biden, Scott Rasmussen polled her at +5. Now, among likely voters, it's an even ball game. That's a significant shift. Now, if you just do registered voters with leaners, she's up by 1, but that still represents Kamala Harris losing 4, or if you look at the likely voters, losing 5 in just a week. In just a week, losing 5. And that's why a lot of us have been saying, listen, you don't want to rest on your laurels. You don't want to say that it's already done, but don't allow a week of polling to get you discouraged. Don't allow the honeymoon period for Kamala Harris to get you discouraged, because you end up seeing things like this jump from 47-42 now to an even ball game. Or if you don't want to have likely voters, just registered with leaners, 47-46. 47-46. So another thing that this shows is that Trump gained in that week, not necessarily by even pulling Kamala Harris's people away from her, but by pulling RFK Jr.'s people away from him. Because you look down here at this one, +2 for Kennedy, +6 last time around. Well, I guess actually the true apples to apples comparison would be this one. So a week ago, 47-42, 6. Now it's 44-43, 6. So Donald Trump gained 1. She's down. This is why you don't let yourself get discouraged by the honeymoon period polls. Here's another one. So this is Rasmussen. It gets confusing because Scott Rasmussen left Rasmussen polling, but this is Rasmussen showing Donald Trump 49, Kamala Harris 44, RFK Jr. 3. Now, Rasmussen's going to be a right-leaning poll. I get that. Certainly more than PPP, which is the Democrats' literal internal pollster. I get that. But one thing that Rasmussen has done really well is that at the end of these races, Rasmussen tends to be closer to the outcome than all these other left-leaning pollsters are. And part of the reason for that is that a poll can only be as accurate as the pollster's prediction of what the electorate looks like. So they poll a bunch of people, right? And then they either weight it or they don't weight it. Now, if they weight it, that's them saying they don't want to listen to who they polled. They believe that the electorate's going to look like this, right? So if you believe, I don't know, let's say you believe 50% of the voters are independent, 25% are Republican, 25% are Democrats, right? If that's what you believe the electorate will look like on election day, then no matter what you get the results from by calling people, you can adjust the weighting of those responses to look like what you think the outcome will be. So a lot of these Democrat pollsters are looking at Kamala Harris thinking that she's the next Barack Obama. Hint, she's not. And they're saying, oh, we expect a surge in Democrat voters. We expect a surge in young voters, a surge in black voters. That may happen. Or more likely than not, she's going to crash and fail because at some point she's going to have to open her mouth in a way that isn't completely scripted on a teleprompter. But a lot of these pollsters that are creating this vision of what they think the electorate will look like on election day will weight the results of their poll accordingly. So if they get a poll that shows Donald Trump winning, but they actually think there's going to be more Democrats than Republicans on election day, they can weight it to show Kamala Harris winning. See, that's how they play these games. That's how they play these games. So a Trump 5 with a Rasmussen poll, not exactly something to pull your hair out over. Now, you don't rest on the laurels. You still have a lot of work to do, but it's still something interesting to see. Anyway, this was another poll that came out from the Telegraph. Telegraph went with Redfield Wilton to conduct a polling of swing states. And what they found was Donald Trump was winning in Pennsylvania, winning in Michigan, tied in Wisconsin, winning by 3 in North Carolina, winning by 6 in Florida. I think that's low. Winning by 2 in Georgia, had Harris up 1 in Arizona, tied in Nevada, Harris winning in Minnesota, Harris winning in New Mexico. And those were the findings. Now, again, this is one pollster, it's a snapshot in time. I get it. But if you look at this poll and you say, okay, well, what would that look like on an electoral college map? Donald Trump wins the presidency. Even if it's tied, a flip-flop, and go either way in Wisconsin or Nevada, those results right there have Donald Trump winning the presidency. Now, you saw a lot of these Kamala Harris Twitter accounts saying, oh, she's tied it in Wisconsin, let's go. Or, oh, she's winning in Arizona, let's go. They love to take credit for one state in the poll, and then they ignore the rest of the states in that poll. There was a ridiculous poll. Let me see if I can find it. A ridiculous poll in Michigan that has been completely skewing the Michigan. Let's go right here. This is the RCP. I like Real Clear Politics better than 538 because 538 weights things according to what they want to happen, what they think should happen. Shandy Pants says that I follow them and have notifications on. I love every poll I like, and I hate that when they release polls I don't. Yeah, it can make you feel like you're pulling your hair out, but you got to know these snapshots in time. And polls are nothing but snapshots in time. One pollster calling a couple hundred or 1,000 people, asking them if they're registered to vote, how they're registered to vote, and who they want to vote for. It's a snapshot in time. What Real Clear Politics does and what 538 does is they will average these polls to try and create a trend, not just looking at one snapshot in time. And you look at this, Michigan, the big outlier here is that Harris is up 2 in Michigan. Everything else is either Trump leading or statistically tied, as in the case of Wisconsin, plus 0.5. If you look at why Real Clear Politics is tied in Michigan, there was a poll from Bloomberg 2 weeks ago showing Kamala Harris up 11. Up 11. A complete outlier, but they've been using Bloomberg the whole year, so they have to include it in this. Completely skewed the results to have Kamala Harris looking like she is plus 2. Rather than it being a Trump lead or more accurately, a 49-49 or 48-48 tie. But yeah, so like this one poll that came out, Democrats ran to it to say, oh, look, she's leading in Arizona. Oh, look, she's leading in Minnesota. Yeah, let's go. She tied it in Nevada. She tied it in Wisconsin. Let's go. I don't know if you follow those accounts. I hate them. That Kamala's wins. They used to be Biden's wins. Changed their name. At the end of every post, they always say, this is huge. This is huge. It's almost like it's automatically plugged in to post. This is huge at the end of everything. They like the polls that they like. They don't like the polls that they don't like. And it's okay. It's okay. So the polls are, again, not as nice as they were when Joe Biden opened his mouth and the world realized he does have crippling dementia. Those were nice polls for Donald Trump. But the polls today are no worse than the polls were before the debate. So if you believed earlier this year, oh, Donald Trump's going to win this. Oh, he's got this. Economy's terrible. People want change. If you felt that way then, don't allow the gaslighting, the media saying, oh, Kamala Harris is actually incredibly popular. Don't like them and the push polls. Don't let them discourage you. Because already 2 weeks after Kamala Harris took over, stole the nomination from Joe Biden, 2 weeks after, we are already seeing a big switch, a big flip back in the direction of Donald Trump. Back in the direction of Donald Trump. I forget why I pulled this clip, but I pulled this clip. Let's see what it is.
We believe in a future where we lower the cost of living for America's families so that they have a chance not just to get by, but to get ahead. Because while our economy is doing well by many measures, prices for everyday things like groceries are still too high. You know it and I know it. You know, when I was Attorney General, I went after price fixing, And when I am president, it will be a day one priority to fight to bring down prices. I will take on big corporations that engage in illegal price gouging. I will take on corporate.
All right, so I remember why I put this. Her new claim is that everything's going to be a day one promise. On day one, I will fix prices. On day one, I will make you have cheaper groceries. She's been in office for 3.5 years. Now, as vice president, but any idea that she or the Democrat Party has to fix out of control inflation, they've had 3.5 years to do it. This day one bullshit, she's in office now. I think that's what a lot of people are saying. A lot of people are realizing, how can you say you're going to fix this on day one? Well, like, why aren't you out there? Why aren't you back in the White House fixing it now? Why are you here? Telling me you'll fix it in 90 days. Fix it now if you have the magic bullet. That's what you're seeing a lot of people saying, and it's a very powerful attack. What the hell are you talking about fixing it on day one? You've been in power for 3.5 years. I think the scarier question is, how batshit crazy or unconstitutional or tyrannical are her proposals to fix inflation, grocery prices, whatever? How crazy are her proposals that she can't even get a dementia-ridden puppet like Joe Biden to implement them for her? Right? If she has the cure, she's been in office for 3.5 years. If she has the cure, why hasn't she said, hey, Joe, let's do this. Fix everyone's problems. Right? So the one hand is like, why haven't you done it? The other hand is, well, maybe no one's done anything she's asked because her policies are so batshit insane that even Biden, a puppet of the Democrats, won't do it. Hearing rumors that are actually terrifying, that Biden might, if the polls swing back in Trump's favor, which they are already starting to do, if the polls swing back in Trump's favor, that we might see Joe Biden withdraw from the White House, like resign completely, so Kamala Harris could take over. And have another bump honeymoon period. Because they're already starting. Listen, she had a bunch of really nice polls in the last week. Again, largely fixed through the sampling and all that. But you can see CNBC, that's not a right-leaning pollster at all. CNBC, registered voters, Trump up 2. Starting to see a switch. Starting to see a trend upward for Trump. So that's what I've been hearing. Rumors that they might give her the presidency after already stealing the candidacy from Biden. Might give her the presidency so that she could have another little honeymoon period. So we'll see. Lots of other really crazy things coming out about Tim Walz, her Kamala Harris's VP pick. Saw a bunch of this while I was traveling yesterday. Tried not to keep my head in my phone too much because I was traveling with my 2 kids, and got to keep an eye on them so they don't all run away. But this is devastating, as Minnesota's governor Tim Walz, on at least 5 occasions, hosted a Muslim cleric who celebrated Hamas's October 7th attack and promoted a pro-Hitler film popular among neo-Nazis. The cleric's Islamist group received $100K plus in state funding from Walz. That's the kind of thing you have to ask him about. What's going on there? What's going on with this crazy group that you seem also comfortable meeting with? Donald Trump Jr. put something out today, which is, again, mind-boggling, that Kamala's VP, Tim Walz, levied a whopping 95% tax on Zyn. If you don't know what Zyn is, they're nicotine pouches. So instead of smoking, instead of wearing a patch or anything, they're pouches. So a lot of people, in order to avoid smoking and getting nicotine fixes the more dangerous way, they'll pop a Zyn. It comes in like a little Altoid container, and they're little pouches. You put them in, you bite on them, and you get a little rush of nicotine. Tim Walz, as governor of Minnesota, levied a 95% tax on Zyn. Now, most people don't. I'd venture to say probably most Americans aren't using this product. But among the people who are, they are, to say they're enthusiastic against Zinn would be an understatement. They are they would rush out and fight for their Zinns. And this guy taxed the hell out of them. Again, the kind of thing, if you want to see what they'll do, look at what they've already done. Look at what they've already done. Just looking through a couple other ones. So we talked about the GE polling. Lots going on about this stolen valor. We touched on it a little bit our last episode with Tim Walz about how he's not only inflated his rank, to make himself appear to be a higher rank than he actually retired as, but he also dropped out after being told he was going to deploy because he didn't want to deploy. So this is the fact check. Who put this fact check out? CBS News. CBS News put this fact check about J.D. Vance. We played the clip the other day when Tim Walz was asked by his country to go to Iraq. You know what he did? He dropped out of the army, allowed his unit to go without him, a fact that he's been criticized for aggressively by a lot of the people he served with. This is the response that CBS News got from the Harris-Walz campaign spokesperson. After 24 years of military service, Governor Walz retired in 2005 and ran for Congress, where he chaired Veterans Affairs and was a tireless advocate for our men and women in uniform. And as Vice President of the United States, he will continue to be a relentless champion for our veterans and military families. That seems like a pretty white bread kind of vanilla response to accusations that he has lied about his rank and quit because he didn't want to deploy. The problem is this has a lie in it, right? Tim Walz was not the chairman of the Veteran Affairs Committee. He was what's called the ranking member. Now, you might think that is just a technicality. No, in order to be a chairman, you have to be in the party that controls Congress, right? If you're not in the party that controls Congress, you're not the chairman. You don't actually get to pick the agenda. You don't get to issue subpoenas. You don't get to call hearings. So he was the highest ranking member in the opposition Democrat Party. He was never the chairman. So, like, in the fact check, the Harris campaign can't even avoid lying in their own fact check. And we played this clip on Wednesday. I don't have it. Do I have it here? No, I have it on my laptop because I was traveling. Of Tim Walz saying, "Oh, I want to ban AR-15s because they're just as dangerous as the weapons I carried in war." He was never in combat. He served in Italy. He was deployed to Italy for a brief period. And he loves to say he was in combat to further Operation Enduring Freedom. If you actually look at the places people could serve to get the medals, so they gave out medals for Operation Enduring Freedom. Italy and like the Dominican Republic, there was only a handful of countries around the globe where if you served, you didn't get the Operation Enduring Freedom medal. Italy was one of them. So this narrative from Tim Walz, I deployed in service to Operation Enduring Freedom, is also kind of a lie. Yeah, like the argument is that he and his unit did security for bases, and sometimes there were airplanes or whatnot that landed at the base to refuel and then left. That's all well and good. But the military itself, the Pentagon itself, does not award people, does not recognize you as having participated in Operation Enduring Freedom if you were stationed in Italy at that time. There's one operation that Italy servicemen and women got credit for, and it was long after Tim Walz left the military. But he's for years said this in combat, which is crazy because he was never in combat. And the crux of this stolen valor bit is that when he was issued that early warning that he was going to deploy, he then promptly retired. And now a lot of people on the left are saying that, oh, Tim Walz, he would have had to put his papers in a year prior. You can't just retire willy-nilly. No, you can retire whenever you want. Military doesn't have to grant it, but you can announce your retirement whenever you want. The notion that he had been planning to retire for years is undercut by the promotion, the CSM, Command Sergeant Major promotion that he had received. Because in order to, by accepting that promotion when he did, he pledged to spend the next 2 years meeting all of the testing, the schooling, and the qualifications to have that promotion. So the minute they said, hey, we want to promote you, they would never have given him that promotion if he had already had retirement papers in. Wouldn't have happened. But the minute that they said, hey, do you want this promotion? If you take it, you got to stay in for 2 years. At the very least, 2 years. Meet all the qualifications, go to school, do all that. He said yes. So the idea, he would not have said yes if he was planning to retire a couple months later. It wouldn't have happened. But then he did retire. And he kept presenting himself as, oh, I retired as a Command Sergeant Major. He didn't. Because the minute he retired, he failed to live up to those requirements that he fill out all the training, all the schooling, right? He skipped out on it. So it was a conditional promotion. Has strings attached. Well, guess what? If you retire before fulfilling all those requirements, you don't get to keep the CSM rank. So he's been going around calling himself retired Command Sergeant Major. And he's also been going around, as I said, insinuating that he was in combat when he was not. Here's a video of Nancy Pelosi praising him for being in combat. And rather than correcting her, saying, oh, no, actually, I wasn't in combat, he said, thank you, and accepted the praise.
From Congressman, Command Sergeant Major.
Again, that's a lie. He was not Command Sergeant Major because he retired before completing all of the requirements for that rank. Let's see.
Tim Walz. And I was so moved by some of what Tim has said in this. He said he taught these young people in high school, and then he had to lead them in the armed services. So he knows the potential of our young people and what we put at risk when we send them into harm's way without the equipment that they need. He will speak for himself, but I want him to know how much we all appreciate his service to our country, whether it's in the classroom or on the battlefield. Congressman Tim Murphy.
This man never saw a battlefield. I'm not going to undercut 24 years of service. 24 years of service in the National Guard is significant, right? It's great. Should be applauded. But that's not what they're going around talking about. Is she's praising him as a rank that he doesn't actually have. He's not correcting her. He's letting that praise come in. And there's a reason for that. The reason for that is CSM is an E9, which is the highest non-commissioned officer rank you can reach. So short of going to officer school and becoming like a lieutenant, CSM, the highest rank you can receive as an enlisted man. Being a CSM in Congress would make him the highest ranking enlisted man in Congress, to serve in Congress, right? That's something to run on. That I served as an enlisted man. I was the highest ranked, and he ran on this narrative. He said it multiple times. He's fundraised off of it, which brings in the Stolen Valor Act. The Stolen Valor Act makes it a felony to lie about your rank, lie about your service for any reason involved in enrichment, personal enrichment. It could be running for Congress as saying you were a rank that you weren't, or it could be going up to McDonald's and claiming to be a veteran and trying to get $1 off your cheeseburger. It's equal. If you lie about your rank, if you lie about your service for your own personal benefit, it's a felony. So he's running around saying he's a rank that he didn't retire as. He briefly held it conditionally with strings attached. He quit before meeting those conditions. So he was stripped of the rank as if it never happened. But he's still running around claiming he was a Command Sergeant Major. And then also running around saying he was in combat on the battlefield. He's not correcting them. He's taking the praise, as we've seen on multiple occasions, himself saying when he wanted to ban AR-15s, he wants to ban them because they are just as dangerous as the weapons he carried in war. He did not carry any weapons in war. Again, not to discredit 24 years of service. It's 24 years more than I have. But you can't lie about it. And it isn't an innocent lie, right? He goes from being the highest ranked enlisted man to ever serve in Congress to being tied for second. Right? That's the difference. That's the difference. And he ran on it. He fundraised on it. He just got introduced on national television by Nancy Pelosi on that lie. A lot of lies related to it. So it's not going away. It's not going away. I saw this one. This is Gene Wu. He is a representative. He's a local state house rep in Texas. I believe he's in Houston area. So he put this up. Tim Walz, military job description, command sergeant major. I want to make sure I think this has a typo in it. Yes. So sergeant major is misspelled. Oopsie daisy. So he wasn't that, and he also misspelled it. Highest rank attained, E9. He didn't obtain it. He didn't attain it because he didn't meet the qualifications to hold it. It was conditional. He didn't complete it because, again, it wasn't an act of God why he didn't attain this rank. He retired promptly after receiving word that he was going to have to deploy. So there's different kinds of warnings, right? There's the actual deployment notice where they say, hey, pack your bags, you're on the next plane tomorrow. There's like the advanced warning, like the formal letter that people get a couple months ahead of time saying, hey, just manage your affairs. And then there are informal warnings that high-ranking soldiers like Tim Walz would have received, saying, "Hey, just to let you know, your unit's going to deploy." So there's different types. He received the informal one, and then a couple months later, retired. But this is what they're trying to say, like, "Oh, he's more decorated than J.D. Vance." First of all, they're lying about the rank. They're lying about the E9. It's not the highest rank available in the U.S. Army. It's the highest non-commissioned officer rank. But he didn't hold it. He didn't keep it because he failed to meet the requirements for it. So they show all of these medals for him, right? And they see J.D. Vance as if he had nothing. Oh, good conduct, Marine Corps, Navy Marine Corps Service Medal. Just looking at him, he would have gotten a lot of these, right? He would have gotten the Global War on Terror Service Medal. Noticeably missing from J.D. Vance's side is the Iraq Campaign Medal, because J.D. Vance, unlike Tim Walz, actually did deploy to Iraq. So they're basically just not including all of the medals and ribbons that J.D. Vance has to make it look like he has nothing. And the irony is that while Tim Walz is going around saying, "Oh, I deployed, I served in combat, I carried these weapons on the battlefield," again, the whole bit is that he didn't. He quit, retired after being notified he was going to deploy, left his men up shit creek without a paddle to run for Congress. He could have run for Congress and deployed. That is possible to do. And he actually did release a press release. Let me see if I can find it. This kind of undercuts the whole bit of like, oh, he didn't know he was deploying when he retired. His campaign did a press release. Let me see if I can find it. I didn't. Here we go. Open new tab. This is from March 20th, 2005, from the Walz campaign for immediate release. Walz still planning to run for Congress despite possible call to duty in Iraq. On Thursday, March 17th, the National Guard Public Affairs Office announced a possible partial mobilization of roughly 2,000 troops from the Minnesota National Guard. First District candidate Tim Walz currently holds the rank of Command Sergeant Major. At that point, that was true because it was conditional. He hadn't retired yet, which is based on New Ulm, and largely composed of men and women from southern Minnesota. The announcement from National Guard PAO specified that all or a portion of Wallace's battalion could be mobilized to serve in Iraq within the next 2 years. Wallace, who teaches global geography at Mankato West High School, has been an active member of the National Guard since 1981. He has previously been deployed during his 23 years in the National Guard, including an 8-month deployment during Operation Enduring Freedom. I'll just keep reading. When asked about his possible deployment to Iraq, Wallace said, "I do not yet know if my artillery unit will be part of this mobilization, and I'm unable to comment further on specifics of this deployment." Although his tour of duty in Iraq might coincide with his campaign for Minnesota's first congressional seat, Wallace is determined to stay in the race. As Command Sergeant Major, I have a responsibility not only to ready my battalion for Iraq, but also to serve if called on. I am dedicated to serving my country to the best of my ability, whether that is in Washington, D.C. or in Iraq. I don't want to speculate on what shape my campaign will take if I am deployed, but I have no plans to drop out of the race. I am fortunate to have a strong group of enthusiastic supporters and a very dedicated, intelligent wife. Both will be a major part of my campaign, whether I'm in Minnesota or Iraq. If called to duty, Wallace would leave behind his wife, Gwen, and 4-year-old daughter, Hope. So he put out a press release recognizing that the National Guard PAO had given a warning to his unit. And as the highest ranking non-commissioned officer in his unit, he would go, right? The idea that they would leave him behind is nonsense. He knew. And when asked about it, he said, as Command Sergeant Major, I have responsibility not only to ready my battalion for Iraq, but also to serve if called on. So this defeats the entire narrative that, he retired, but he didn't know he was deploying. Not only did he know he was deploying, but his press release from his campaign at the time said he had a responsibility to serve if called on, and that he was dedicated to serving his country. Well, then it became real, I guess, for him. And he retired, sent his men off to Iraq without their highest ranking non-commissioned officer. And the most critical comments on this have come from the men who replaced Wallace in that CSM position. But yeah, he absolutely knew he was deploying. And at the time, he said he has to go. I have a responsibility, I have an obligation, I have a duty to go. Well, I guess that changed. So listen, he can retire all he wants, but you have to accept the consequences of putting out a press release like this, saying it's my responsibility to go and then not go. Can't have it both ways. Let's see if there's anything else. Donald Trump is in Montana today. If you want to know why he's in Montana, that's because Tester, Democrat senator, is on the ropes. They want to get rid of him. He's one of those red state Democrat senators. Trump's going up there not because he needs to campaign in Montana for himself, but because he wants to get rid of Tester. So he's in Montana today. He's scheduled a bunch of different interviews, but Trump's coming back out swinging. And I would not be surprised if we saw a shakeup in his campaign. Now, the left, the mainstream media, always loves to treat these shakeups as if they are catastrophic. But you remember when Donald Trump ran in 2016, he had like 3 or 4 different campaign managers at some point. And I kind of likened it to a baseball team. You have a starting pitcher, you have middle relief, and then you have a closer. The starting pitcher might not be the best campaign manager for you at the close. So I would not be surprised if you see Donald Trump switch up his campaign management in the next coming weeks if he doesn't see a big enough upswing as what he wants to see after Kamala Harris's honeymoon period is now over. So that's all I have. As I said, Mr. Producer Josh is out today. Keep his mom in everyone's prayers. Last I heard, she's doing fine. She had a procedure done. Just keep her in your prayers. And hopefully, Mr. Producer Josh will be back with us on Monday. But until then, I'm going to call it here because I talked about everything I wanted to talk about and didn't have a ton of time to prepare for this because I was traveling yesterday. But if you like this kind of content, like the podcast, subscribe. If you're watching on Twitter, X, We're on Rumble as well, and we're also on YouTube. You can find us at Right Guy Podcast, or you can just follow whatever Twitter X handle you're watching this on. We also have the audio podcast. We try and make this as audio friendly as possible. So that's found. You can find that pretty much everywhere there are audio podcasts. That's it for this edition of the podcast. My name is Max McGuire. Remember, everyone, that the fight to take back our country is not over yet, but the only way we win is if we all stand up and fight together. See you next time.